While I'm working on the joints, I'm also going to be preparing the blocks for the cello. A big part of the work I already did, as usually when I prepare the blocks, I like doing quite a few of them at a time, so I do a few until I run out of them and then I prepare some more. So they are already cut to the right height that I want and somewhere closer to the measurement that they will actually be. Although I still want to make sure that at least 3 sides of them are in square, as I will need that later on. And also I want to cut some parts of them because they're a bit too big in some places. For the one of the upper and the lower blocks, I also want to correct a little bit the grain that I see it's not perfectly flat, or not perfectly straight, let's say, in a 90-degree angle, and I'm quite picky with that. I really want them to be very straight. And also, in particular for the upper block, I need to check the direction of the grain, as here it is where eventually I will be making the neck joint. It is very important that on the upper part it goes from top to back, because if not, I am going to be struggling a lot. It might even split a little bit the wood if it's not good. So I really need to make sure that I'm going to be gluing this block with a grain that it goes in that direction from top to back. So yeah, there are still quite a few things to do, even if it seems like it's very close there. I made these templates before, which are the same ones for the corners of this model, so they make it a little bit easier to work on these kind of things. I already drew these ones, but I want to do it better, as I was just checking. So all this can be removed. For example, it's a lot. So I finished roughing out the blocks. Of course there's still a lot of work to do, but at least they're a tiny bit closer to the right width and height. So now what I want to do is to glue them. For that I am going to be doing it on the side of the top, and I'm going to be lifting them all using some wood. That way I can have space for the linings and to work comfortably. This is as well something that I can do with tight bond, as I will be removing these blocks from the poles in the future.